Okay, Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. So in today's Khatirah, we're going to be talking about the virtues of spending. And what I wanted to begin this talk with was to go through one of the verses of Surah Al-Ali Imran. Because when we, inshallah, this verse of Surah Ali Imran will highlight for us one of the virtues of spending, inshallah. So Allah Ta'ala in Surah Ali Imran, He mentions in the fourth juz, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّةٍ عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning that, rush towards Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, rush towards the forgiveness of Allah. Rush towards Jannah. And the verb itself, wasari'u, means that it's not something that you yourself alone are supposed to be worried about this. Rather, it's an effort that's supposed to be happening on a communal level. It's supposed to be happening collectively. Wasari'u, collectively, Allah Ta'ala is saying, collectively rush towards the forgiveness of Allah. Then Allah Ta'ala says, collectively rush towards Jannah. What that means is that when a person is working towards Jannah, we should be encouraging one another to perform the acts which will get us there, inshallah. We should be helping one another out and getting ourselves there through encouraging, through performing acts together, so on and so forth. So the first part of the ayah is saying, don't worry just about yourself, right? That you're supposed to have this worry for yourself, for your family, for your community, and for the entire ummah at large. So then Allah Ta'ala basically sets the theme up of this ayah in that way, that our mindset is that we're not only supposed to be worried about ourselves, but we're supposed to be working towards this common goal collectively, which is to obtain the forgiveness of Allah and, of course, inshallah, to enter Jannah. Then Allah Ta'ala says, وَجَنَّةٍ عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. The rush towards Jannah. Okay, and what is the description of Jannah? The عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. The description of Jannah is that its width is the entire heavens and the earth combined. I mean, we don't even know how big the universe is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying Jannah is that vast. So already we understand from this description that Jannah is far beyond what our mind can even comprehend, far behind where our imagination can go. Because science cannot tell us how vast the universe is. And Allah Ta'ala is saying Jannah is that vast. Then the main part here, Allah Ta'ala mentions who Jannah has been prepared for. He says, أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Jannah has been prepared for those who have taqwa. Jannah has been prepared for those who are God conscious, who are conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the question is, who are these people? Because when we talk about taqwa, when we talk about being conscious of Allah Ta'ala, we have to remember that, yes, it's translated very literally in like one word, which is to be conscious of Allah, right? But it's not just, the concept of taqwa is not just one quality, but rather taqwa is a culmination of many qualities combined. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be talking about these qualities in the next ayah. He says, أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. That Jannah has been prepared for those who have taqwa. Who are those that have taqwa? The first quality, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ. That the first quality Allah Ta'ala could have mentioned, as I mentioned, taqwa is a culmination of qualities. And Allah Ta'ala chose to describe those who have taqwa with this quality first, which is الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ, those who spend in ease and in adversity. So spending was the first quality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described for those who have taqwa. If you want to know how much taqwa we have to ask ourselves, where is our level of spending? Because if we're conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that means we're going to be conscious of the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we're conscious of the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that means we know that when we spend, our wealth is not actually decreasing. Right? When we spend, our wealth is actually not decreasing. Rather, we are just transferring from the bank account of this world to the bank account of the hereafter. That's what essentially is happening when we're spending for the sake of Allah. And Allah Ta'ala is saying the first quality of those who have taqwa is that they spend in ease. If it's easy for a person to spend, right? Was one dollar or in adversity, even if it's difficult for a person to spend, that they still do it. Because when we talk about the concept of spending, it doesn't have to be a lot. When you say, when we're talking about charity and obtaining all the virtues of charity, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a lot for. It doesn't mean that a person has to spend a lot in order to obtain those virtues of charity. But rather, even if a person gives a little bit, but it's with sincerity, then that will be so beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It comes in a hadith. Imam Nawawi mentions in his Arba'in, and it's a Sahih hadith, where he says, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Sabaqa dirhamun alfa darahim." That one, the reward that one companion got for spending one dirham was more than that which a companion got for spending 1,000 dirham. So how did the person who have one dirham get more reward than the one who spent 1,000? The Prophet ﷺ then says, the one who had spent one dirham, he only had two, and he spent one despite only having two dirham. So he didn't think to himself, oh, it's difficult for me, I don't have. But he thought to himself, well, I have two, I can give one. Right? So he gave one. And the one who had 1,000, the one who gave 1,000 dirham, he had hundreds and thousands of dirham. So technically, proportionally, in terms of percentage, the one who gave two dirham, the one who gave one dirham gave more of his wealth. And that is that showed a level of sincerity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said his reward basically superseded the reward of the other. Right. So when we talk about spending, it doesn't have to be a lot. It is just according to whatever we're able to give, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward. We know the month of Ramadan came, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he increased in three things. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam increased in his worship. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam increased in his dua, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also increased in his charity. It comes in Sahih Hadith. Aisha anha narrates that the Prophet ﷺ was already very generous, but he would become more generous in the month of Ramadan. More than like a wind, just giving, letting his wealth just go. That's how we basically can understand the Prophet ﷺ would just give. That's how the Prophet ﷺ would take advantage of this month, because he knows the virtue of this month, and he's just giving. For every $1 a person spends, you're getting a minimum of reward of having spent $70. Because every one good deed you do, you get the reward of having done it 70 times. So if you spend $1, it's as if you're spending $70. You don't get a deal like this very often, right? So to obtain Jannah, we have to have taqwa. And if you want to have taqwa, one of the signs that we have taqwa is that we spend in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now there are so many virtues in spending in the path of Allah. One hadith, mashallah, that comes to mind, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Ma minkum min ahadin illa sayukallimuhu Allah, laysa baynahu wa baynahu tarjuman." That everyone on the day of judgment will come, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will speak to Allah ta'ala will speak to them directly. There will not be between Allah and him someone to translate, meaning it's going to be direct conversation. Then the hadith says, فَيَنْظُرُ أَيْمَنْ مِنْهُ فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا مَا قَدَّمَ. Then the person will look to his right or her right, and just look for something that they can, present to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they know Allah will love. They will look to the right, they will only see the deeds that they have performed. فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا مَا قَدَّمَ فَيَنْظُرُ أَشْأَمْ مِنْهُ فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا مَا قَدَّمَ. Then a person will look to the left to see, okay, what is there, and they will only see the deeds that they have performed. فَيَنْظُرَ بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا النَّارِ تِلْقَاءَ وَجْهِهِ. Then a person will look behind them, and they will only see the fire there. Then the Prophet ﷺ mentions, how do we separate ourselves from the fire? If this is going to be the situation for everyone on the Day of Judgment, how do we separate ourselves from the fire? The Prophet ﷺ says, فَاتَّقُوا النَّارِ, that have taqwa of the fire. One of the meanings of taqwa is to build a barrier between yourself and something else. That's one of the meanings of taqwa. So when Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, as it comes in this hadith, فَاتَّقُوا النَّارِ, what Allah Ta'ala is saying, like, have taqwa of the fire. What that means is that build a barrier between yourself and the fire, and to build a barrier between yourself and the fire. And then the Prophet ﷺ explains, how does a person build a barrier between themselves and the fire? The Prophet says, فَاتَّقُوا النَّارَ وَلَوْ بِشَقِّ تَمْرَةٍ. Even if you have to give only half of a date for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do that to build a separation between you and the fire. So what the Prophet ﷺ is saying, that if you want to separate yourself from the fire, one way you do it is by giving sadaqah. One way that you do it is by giving sadaqah, because the Prophet didn't say فَاتَّقُوا النَّارَ وَلَوْ أَن تُصَلِّي رَكَعَةً, that okay, fear the fire even if you have to pray 2 rakahs. The Prophet didn't, even if you have to, you know, and perform Hajj or perform Umrah. The Prophet said, fear the fire even if it means giving half of a date. Because giving half of a date, even this level of charity can be so beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it separates you from the fire, that it distances you from the fire. Right? So what was the one action the Prophet ﷺ mentioned here? He mentioned sadaqah, showing the importance of sadaqah, showing the value of sadaqah, showing the virtue of sadaqah. Sadaqah is so virtuous in that side of Allah that if a person sincerely gives sadaqah, that can be their entrance into Jannah. That can be a person's entrance into Jannah just by giving sadaqah sincerely. We know the companions, they were known for many things. They would obviously engage in ibadah. They would engage in, in salah. They would engage in recitation of Quran. Many of them were known for their knowledge, right? But do we find the Prophet ﷺ ever said to a companion that because of your knowledge you will enter Jannah? Did the Prophet ﷺ ever say to a companion, because of your, tahajjud, because of your salah you will enter Jannah? The Prophet ﷺ never said that. But when Uthman gave, the Prophet ﷺ said, do whatever you wish, because after today, due to your charity, there is nothing that can harm you. So the Prophet ﷺ guaranteed Uthman Jannah on virtue of his sadaqah, on virtue of his charity, showing the importance of charity, showing the virtue of charity. It's something that is so beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it really requires a person to, sacrifice what they love, that the person sacrifice what they love for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It comes in a hadith, the Prophet was asked, أَيُّ صَدَقَةِ خَيْرٍ, that which sadaqah is best? Then the Prophet said, that أَن تُنْفِقْ وَأَنْتَ صَحِيحٌ حَرِيصٌ صَحِيحٌ. The Prophet said that you spend, the best sadaqah is that you spend, okay, and you are young, you are healthy, and you yourself have desires in terms of where you would want to spend. You'd want to buy something for yourself, but you don't do that, and you sacrifice that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you spend for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is something that is so beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the best type of charity, that a person spends knowing that if they don't, they can use that for themselves. But despite that, knowing that they can use it for themselves, they spend for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the best type of charity. Abdullah Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he said, spending 1 dirham, or giving basically $1 in the path of Allah when you're young, is better than giving 1,000 when you're older. This is a statement of Abdullah Mas'ud, one of the great companions of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, spending 1 dirham when you're younger is more beloved, is more rewardable than spending 1,000 when you're older. Because again, when a person is young, they can use that for themselves. They can benefit from them directly, and they can use it for themselves. When a person is older, they're only thinking about where they're going to go then. But when a person is young and you're sacrificing, that is really beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And some of the other virtues of giving sadaqah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that was sadaqah tutfi'ul khati'ah kama tutfi'ul ma' an-nar, that giving sadaqah is a way that a person can have their sins forgiven. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that sadaqah extinguishes sins just like water extinguishes fire. So that if, from a person, spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will be a cause of our forgiveness. It will be a way for a person to enter Jannah. Another hadith that comes in Tirmidhi, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, كل امرئ في ظل صدقته حتى يقضي حتى يقضى بين الناس. It mentions on the day of judgment, we know it's going to be so hot. The sun will be just a mile above our head. Some people will be sweating in their up until their ankles, some to their knees, some to their necks, and some they will be swimming in their sweat and drowning in their sweat. What is one way we protect ourselves from the fire? Sorry, what is one way that we protect ourselves from the sun there in that situation? The Prophet ﷺ says that on the day of judgment, everyone will be in the shade of their sadaqah. Everyone's shade on the day of judgment will be their sadaqah. So the shade that you will get on the day of judgment will be proportionate to the amount of sadaqah that you give. Right? The shade that a person gets to protect themselves and to shield themselves from the sun on the day of judgment will be proportional to the amount of sadaqah that we have given. Right? So this shows us that if we want to be shaded on the day of judgment, we have to spend. Because the hadith says, the Prophet says that every person will be in the shade of their sadaqah until Allah Ta'ala has judged between everyone. Until Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has judged between everyone. Right? So that's going to, we know sadaqah is going to be 50,000 years long. So that is going to be a place that if we didn't spend, we're going to wish that we did. This is one of the another virtue of sadaqah. Another virtue of sadaqah is that the Prophet ﷺ said that dawu mardakum bis sadaqah, that give cure to your sick by giving sadaqah. Right? What does that mean? That means that by giving sadaqah, Allah Ta'ala, on virtue of that, can shower upon the sick mercy, and then the sick can become healthy again. So one way that a person will be able to become healthy themselves and also cure the sick is by giving sadaqah on their behalf. This is like an esoteric reality to this. Right? We believe in the unseen as Muslims. So a person may think, what does sadaqah have to do with health? Allah Ta'ala has built this connection. Allah Ta'ala has built this connection that if a person gives sadaqah, then it will be a cause of health. It will bring health. And we as Muslims, we believe that. So this is one of the benefits of sadaqah. Right? The Prophet ﷺ says that ad-dunya mazra'atun lil-akhirah. The Prophet ﷺ said that the dunya is a cropland for the akhirah. What that means is that when a farmer, right, you put the seed on the ground, and then after a while the farmer sees the fruit grow. Right? Likewise, the Prophet says the dunya is like that. A person should be concentrating on the seeds, planting the seeds. And then the hereafter, a person will be able to reap all the rewards, because then everything that we planted, a person will be able to see, it will grow, and a person will be able to see it on the day of judgment. One of the ways that we plant seeds in this dunya for the hereafter is by spending. Because this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. Oh, Allah Ta'ala, He always says, وَجَاهِدُوا بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ فِي. Allah Ta'ala says, always strive with your wealth. This comes in so many ayats of the Quran. Strive with your wealth. Because again, it's not an easy thing to do. Spending for the sake of Allah is not necessarily an easy thing. It requires a lot of internal sacrifice. A person has to, we have to battle our nafs. We have to battle shaitan. And then a person will give. The Prophet, Allah Ta'ala is commanding, Jahidu bi amwalikum, that fight yourselves, that strive to give. We know there's going to be this internal struggle, but you should still strive to give, because this is something that is so beloved to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And again, it's not just about it doesn't matter how much you give, but the fact that a person is giving. Even one time, there was a poor person that came to Aisha radhiyallahu anha, and she had a grape. And what she did was she cut that grape in half, and she gave half the grape to the poor person, and then kept half the grape, the other half for herself. Now, when one of the companions saw this, they asked Aisha anha, what is half of a grape going to do? Like, the poor person is still going to be hungry after that grape. Like, you're not even going to be satisfied with your half. But what is that half of a grape going to do to the poor person? Now look, she gave half of a grape. We're not concentrating on how much. We're concentrating on the fact that giving is taking place. Like Aisha anha said, being mashallah the genius that she was, radhiyallahu anha, the mother of the believers, she said that how many atoms are in that grape? How many atoms are in that grape. And we know that one of the smallest particles that exists is an atom. So how many atoms comprise of that grape? Right? So we know that it's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of atoms that comprise that grape. So she said, didn't you read the ayah in the Quran? فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ. Whoever does even an atom's worth of a good deed, that they will see its reward in the hereafter. Whoever does an atom's worth of a good deed, they will see its reward in the hereafter. She said that grape, that half grape, it probably is comprised of hundreds, if not thousands of atoms. I gave that because I'm going to be seeing those rewards in the day of judgment. This shows her true understanding. So again, it's not just about how much a person is giving, but the fact that a person is giving, and that will be something that is so beloved to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. So we ask Allah Taala to give us the tawfiq to understand these virtues. We ask Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to give us tawfiq to spend in the path of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. We ask Allah Taala to grant all of us sincerity. We ask Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to accept all of our good deeds. Jazakumullah khair for listening. Assalamu alaikum. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum.